Hello, everybody. It's Zach here from RealEstateLicenseWizard.com. Today is the day a lot of you guys have been looking forward to. Today, I'm going to go over 100 questions from our National Real Estate Practice Exam. This will be our 2020 version, and if you watched our previous 2019 videos, you'll already be familiar with the format. Now, if you haven't watched our 2019 video, I highly suggest you do. While the versions are different, the information on the 2019 video is still relevant and still a fantastic study resource. We decided to do a 2020 version because between last year and now we've added more questions. So this version will have some newer questions mixed in, and to be honest, I wanted to go through them with you guys. So we'll probably do a new version every year, so if you're watching this in the distant future, look forward to that too. The way this works is I'm going to go through every question, read it over, give you guys an opportunity to think about the question and come up with an answer. I highly encourage you guys to grab a pencil and paper and follow along. That way, it's just like taking the real exam and you can have a simulated test experience. Now, if you guys want to take the real deal, of course, head over to our website. You can try it there yourself. And lastly, this is such a great resource for anyone preparing for the real estate exam. So before you get started, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new to this channel. That way you can see all of our real estate exam related stuff. Anyways, buckle up and grab some popcorn, grab your paper and pencil, and let's get started. So, our first question. The question states, what is the difference between the market value of your home and the amount you owe the lender who holds the mortgage? And it gives us four options. Is it A, equity, B, proration, C, variance, or D, appreciation? So as always, and you guys will get used to this, I'm going to give you guys a moment here to read it over yourself, think about it, come up with the answer, all that good stuff. All right, so hopefully you guys came up with your answer. So the correct answer for this one is equity, the first option. So the term is used very often in real estate. Equity is the difference between market value of the home and the amount you owe the lender who holds the mortgage. Your equity, of course, is the money you receive after paying off the mortgage if you were to sell the home. Pretty straightforward. All right, next question. So this question states, a contract that legally binds two or more parties together to specific obligations that create a legally binding contract between the buyer and the seller. Is it settlement and transfer agreement? Is it the purchase agreement? Is it the escrow agreement? Or is it the equity agreement? All right, go ahead and read that over, think it over, all that good stuff. All right, hopefully you guys came up with an educated guess or answer. So the correct answer for this one is the purchase agreement. So the purchase agreement is a contract that legally binds two or more parties together to specific obligations, pretty much verbatim of what the question was. But in plain terms, a purchase agreement is the document buyers and sellers sign with all the terms and conditions of their transaction on it. All right, next question. Question number 3. So, for this one, it says an individual seeking to be excused from the requirements of a zoning ordinance needs it gives us four options: a certificate of alternative usage, a certificate of exclusion, a building permit, or a variance. So go ahead and think that one over. All right. Did you guys come up with it? So the correct answer for this one is a variance. Yes. So that is an individual seeking, again, exactly what it says. An individual seeking to be excused from requirements, they need a variance. A variance is a request to deviate from current zoning requirements. If granted, it permits the owner to use his or her land in a way that is not ordinarily permitted by zoning ordinance. So the correct answer for that one is variance. All right, next question. Okay, question 4. Which of the following is a lien? Okay, So and it gives us four options. Is it A mortgage, B, a novation, C, an investment, or D, an easement? So go ahead and think that one over. Uh, Come up with your answer for that one. All right. Did you guys come up with it? Okay, so for this one, the correct answer is the first one. It's a mortgage. Yes, a mortgage is a lien. A lien is just a legal claim to an asset, and mortgages are a type of lien as it provides the lender a claim over the borrower's assets and allows the lender the right to detain the assets to secure payment if anything bad happens. All right, next question, number 5. Oh, okay, here we go. The agency that enforces all federal environmental rules and regulations. Is it the EPA? Is it the SDWA? Is it the SARA? Or is it the CERCLA or CERCLA, as they say? All right, so think that one over. Gonna give you guys an opportunity to think about it here. All right, did you guys come up with it? All right, so the correct answer for this one is the EPA. Yes, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. So that's the federal agency responsible for dealing with all environmental issues. The EPA was established in December 1970 by an executive order of the United States, or I'm sorry, an executive order of the United States President Richard Nixon, actually. And the agency enforces all federal environmental rules and regulations. So pretty straightforward. Just got to know, what the EPA is and kind of what it does. Our next question. Ooh, okay. Question 6. Which situation is legal under the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968. So it gives us four options. The first one is the ability to buy a property with the intent to resell it to your mother in law for double the price. The next one is the refusal of a property manager to rent an apartment to a Catholic couple who are otherwise qualified. Is it C or the next one? I'm sorry, I keep saying A, B, or C, but I mean, it's basically one, two, or three, or four. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, the intentional neglect of withholding certain properties to your clients to buy for yourself, or the last one, the instance of a widowed woman on renting her spare bedroom only to another widowed woman. All right. Oh, and that one says the insistence, not instance. Sorry for that. Okay, so give you guys an opportunity to read that over, think it over, and come up with an answer. Alrighty. The correct answer for this one is the last one. It's the insistence of widowed women on renting her spare bedroom only to another widowed woman. And basically, the Federal Fair Housing Act is a law that prohibits discrimination in buying, selling, renting, or financing of housing. These laws prohibit discrimination based on race, religion, color, sex, and lots more. You cannot have a listing that states looking for like white people only or looking for married couples without children only. The interesting thing though is you can put language referring to sex. So for example, seeking a female roommate. However, it's only in cases of finding someone to share living spaces with. So that's one of the tougher ones. You just have to be familiar with the Federal Fair Housing Act to get that one. All right, next question, number 7. Okay, mortgage points, also known as discount points, are, and the first option says fees paid directly to the lender at closing in exchange for a reduced interest rate, or discounts on interest rates granted from the government, or fees paid directly to the lender at closing in exchange for a reduced down payment. And lastly, discounts on down payments granted from the government. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to come up with the correct answer for that one. All right. Did you guys come up with that one? So it is this one right here. Fees paid directly to the lender at closing in exchange for a reduced interest rate. So some people get this mixed up. They might think it's this one, for a reduced down payment. But if you think about it, that really wouldn't make much sense. Uh, Basically, mortgage points, it's all about the reduced interest rate. The interest rates decreases, not the down payment. But this is a great option for anyone who is buying a property for a long time. If they know they're going to be living there for a while or owning for a while, mortgage points are basically, a great way to save a lot of money because again, the interest rate is lowered. All right, next question. Question number 8. Which answer includes 3 actual types of business structures? Choose the best answer. Okay. So we've got corporation, sole proprietorship, a limited liability company, a sole proprietorship, a joint partnership, and a share partnership, a general partnership, a joint corporation, a sole company, or CIRCLA, LLC, and AARP. All right. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. Alrighty. So hopefully you guys chose the right answer for this one. It is here. Corporation, sole proprietorship, and limited liability company. So the 5 most popular types of businesses are sole proprietorship, general partnership, limited partnership, corporation, and LLC or limited liability company. So for the answer above, that would be those 3 options are all types of business structures. This is important. It does come up on the exam, especially for when you're working with commercial real estate. You need to be familiar with business structures because how businesses own own property is super important, and you have to fully understand that to be a real estate agent, which is why they ask these questions on the exam, these types of questions about business structures. All right, next one. Number 9. Condominiums are often abbreviated and called condos, corps, cocos, or co-ops. All right, I'll give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. All right, the correct answer for this one is condos. So a condominium is often abbreviated condo, and basically it's just a type of living space similar to an apartment, but is independently sellable and therefore regarded as real estate. Now, unlike apartments, which are leased by their tenants, condominiums are owned outright. A condominium, as I mentioned earlier, is shortened usually to condo. All right, number 10, next question. Which of the following is a common example of real estate police power? All right, it gives us 4 options here. Is it ballooning? Is it zoning? Speeding tickets or parking tickets? All right, think that one over. Alrighty, hopefully you guys came up with an answer there. So the correct answer is zoning. Yes, it's actually one of the most common common forms of police power. Probably, yeah, actually, it is probably the most common, and it is the constitutional authority, uh, inherent power of a state to adopt, enforce laws and regulations to promote and support public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. That is police power, and of course, the examples there's many examples of police power, but the most common is zoning. All right, next one. All right, question 11. Traditionally, real estate agents are paid through a fee paid for performing a transaction called and it gives us 4 options here: a earnest deposit, a commission, a salary, or a wage. All right. So think that one over, come up with a educated answer. All right. Did you guys figure it out? The correct answer for this one is a commission. Yes. So most real estate agents make money through commission. Commission is a fee paid to an agent for performing a transaction, and it's usually a percentage of the property's selling price, although sometimes it can be a flat fee. So the key takeaway for this one is notice how it says traditionally. It says right here, traditionally, because honestly, some real estate agents they can be paid a flat fee that is not a commission from their broker, or they could just get paid a regular wage. It's very, very rare, like super rare. But there are some instances where, uh, commission splits are just completely different. Actually, there's places now that they do like you get an entire commission split, but you have to pay like rent to work for the broker almost. But there's tons of different ways to do that. But obviously, the traditional way that real estate agents are paid for performing a transaction, that's called a commission. So, all right, next one. All right, fees that the buyer pays to close the deal are called homeowner fees, broker fees, closing costs, or seller's costs. Alrighty. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. All right. So this one, um, you kind of have to understand closing, uh, because I mean, if you understand closing and how it's the final step of a real estate transaction, then you're going to understand what this one is. It's closing costs. It goes in hand in here. When you hear close the deal, close the deal, closing, think of closing costs. That is our correct answer. And of course, as I mentioned, it's the final step in the transaction. And that's when ownership and payment is transferred to the rightful parties. The fees that the buyer pay to close the deal are called closing costs. Alrighty. Next question. Question 13. Any loss in the value of a property over time from any cause. Okay, and it gives us four options. Is it depreciation, depression, decreasement, or deliverance? All right. Think that one over. All right. Did you guys come up with it? The correct answer for this one is depreciation. Yes. Depreciation is any loss in the value of a property over time from any cause. And of course, the three main forms of depreciation are economic obsolescence, functional obsolescence, and physical deterioration. All right, next question. A legal way to dissolve the relationship when parties don't voluntarily agree to its termination is called is it parceling out? Is it partition? Is it divorce? Or is it disbursement? So think that one over. All right. So the correct answer for this one is partition. Second option. Partition is a term used in real estate to describe an act by court order to divide up concurrent estate or a concurrent estate into separate portions representing interests of the owners of a property. All right. Next one. 15. Oh, this is another business structure one. So it says, which business structure traditionally features a board of directors? Is it corporation, cooperative, a sole proprietorship, or a partnership? All right. Did you guys come up with that one? Correct answer for this one is a corporation. So corporations can be formed for profit or non-profit purposes, but they are always managed and operated by a board of directors. A couple key takeaways about corporations is they have certain rights beyond partnerships. The biggest thing is they can purchase property because they are a legal entity. So if a corporation purchases property, it's under like the corporation owns it, not an individual person. That's the biggest difference between, well, when it comes to when we're talking about real estate business structures, it's the biggest difference that agents and you guys need to understand for the exam. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this question. So we'll do the next one. 16. All right. An appraiser has been hired to prepare an appraisal report of a property for loan purposes. The property is a 25-year-old strip mall. To which approach to value should the appraiser give the greatest weight when making this appraisal? Is it the property expense approach? Is it the sales comparison approach? Is it the gross rent approach or the income approach? Alrighty. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over, reread it if you need to. Alrighty. So before I answer this one, obviously the appraisal process is based on a bunch of factors. So they're usually a combination of a few both ones. But the correct answer for this one is the income approach. So basically, when you hear um, this part, strip mall, uh, basically you need to think of potential for income because that's when the income approach comes in. So it's primarily used for rental properties. So when you hear strip mall, things like that, maybe like a plaza or something. I mean, there's plenty of examples, but in this case, the most weight would be given to the income approach because again, that's how you're figuring out how much money or income the property is going to make. Now, I've heard some people get a little confused with this one, and they think that it's the gross rent uh, multiplier, which would be this option right here. But that's a little bit different. So the gross rent multiplier it's commonly used to figure out how many years it takes to pay off a loan. Or I'm sorry, yeah, how many years to pay off a loan on a property through rent. uh, Gross. So that's basically what that is. It's different to the income approach, and appraisers uh, are going to be using the income approach for this, not the gross rent multiplier. Although again, they may use things like that or different approaches all in one, but primarily uh, they're going to be using the income approach for this specific example. All right, next question, 17. All right, often required for mortgages, property insurance for a home is commonly called, and it gives us four options: property tax insurance, property tax, homeowners insurance, or ownership insurance. Alrighty. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. All right. So this one, pretty straightforward. It's homeowners insurance. Some people get this mixed up with property tax. It is true. Because some people think, because when you're looking at a mortgage and you're looking at what people are paying month to month, property tax is included as well as homeowners insurance traditionally. So that's why some people do get this mixed up with property tax. But no, it's just called homeowners insurance. It's pretty straightforward. It's just homeowners insurance. And of course, most loans do require some form of homeowners insurance. So keep that in mind as well. Alrighty, next question. Question 18. What is radioactive gas dispersed from natural decay of mineral and earth? And it is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Alrighty. So go ahead and think that one over. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to read the four the four options. Is it argon? Is it mold, radon, or asbestos? And of course, now I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to figure that one out. Alrighty. So the correct answer for this one is radon. Yes, radon. Radon is the radioactive gas dispersed from natural decay of mineral and earth. and it is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. It rises out of the ground and enters the home through openings in a basement. If trapped inside a house, it can increase to harmful health levels and can actually cause cancer and can also contaminate groundwater. So this is super important. It's super important why it's important to have radon test kits in basements and parts of houses. All right, next question. 19. An example of an antitrust violation is it price fixing, an equity loan, or buying a house in another state, or selling more than 100 houses in a taxable year? All right, going to give you guys an opportunity to think about that one. All right, the correct answer for this one is price fixing. So, price fixing, or just fixing for short, is the practice of setting the price of a good or service to make a particular price a standard. So, in our terms, real estate fixing is when competing agents meet up and agree on the same commission rates. So, for example, if like me and you were real estate agents for two different brokers, and we bet up together and we were like, hey, let's just start charging our clients, 10% commission. And if we're the only real estate agents in the area, guess what? They would have to pay that. And that's obviously illegal because you can't do that. That would be a violation of the antitrust laws. You can't just sit there and decide, oh, we're gonna charge people this price. If we all agree, they have to pay it. Yeah, that is a clear antitrust violation, and you can't even imply that. You can't even briefly like suggest anything, make jokes about that. That's a very serious offense. So, yeah, keep that in mind when you guys do start your real estate career. Do not talk about fixing any sort of prices. All right, next question. Oh, here we go. Uh, Question 20. The majority of homes before blank used lead paint. And that gives us four options: 1993, 1978, 1972, or 1950. All right. Think that one over. Alrighty. Did you guys come up with it? This one is 1978. So I see this one often mixed up. Sometimes they say it's 1972, 1996, or 1993, things like that, but it is 1978. So the law was established in 1996, but the law states that homes before 1978 must have a lead warning statement and allow buyers 10 days to obtain certified inspections before purchase obligations, or they must disclose information about any existing lead paint. So that's a super important one, which, when you guys do pass the exam and you start your career, you're going to see this all the time. Eventually, 1978 is going to be ingrained in your brains. You'll never forget that year because of this specific thing. And it's that the majority of homes before then, they used lead paint. All right, next question. 21. All right, emblements are, I think gives us four options: annual crops produced by cultivation legally belonging to the tenant, a thing used to make property look more attractive, a use of the property in any means deemed legal, or a use of a property in any legal manner. All right, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think this one over. Alrighty, did you guys come up with that? So this is like a pretty basic vocab question. It's just asking what emblements are. Sometimes you will see these on the exam. It's just basically asking, what it is. And for this one, it's the first option here. It's annual crops produced by the cultivation legally belonging to tenant. That's what emblements are by definition. All right, next one, 22. An offer to purchase real estate becomes a contract when it is signed by gives us four options: the seller and the agent, the buyer and the seller, buyer, or the seller. So think about that one for a moment. All right. Hopefully you guys came up with that one. The correct answer is the buyer and the seller. So there's a bunch of things that have to be, valid for a contract, or I'm sorry, a bunch of things that have to happen that have to happen for a contract to be valid. Obviously, a party is going to be 18 years or older, must be legal, but there must another one of those things is there must be mutual consent of the contract, and what that means is that any purchase for real estate must be signed by both the buyer and the seller in order to be valid. Both parties must follow these guidelines. So, key takeaway here, you can't just like sign something yourself or have one of your clients sign something and then be like, oh, well, we signed it. It's legally valid. No, you need both parties to sign the contract. So that's pretty much it for that one. All right, 23. Puffing is a term referring to uh, extravagant claims made by sellers in order to attract buyers, a large increase of sellers in a specific market, using another agent's funds to buy a property with their permission, or massive inflation of prices due to economic gains. Alrighty. So we're going to give you guys an opportunity to think about this one. Alrighty. Did you guys come up with it? So the correct answer for this one is extravagant claims made by sellers in order to attract buyers. So yeah, puffing is actually more common than you may think. Um, if you go into like a clothing store and somebody says, "Oh, wow, that's the best," I haven't seen anyone wear that shirt. If you try a shirt on and the salesman's like, "Oh my god, that shirt looks amazing. I've never seen anyone look better in that shirt in my life." That would be considered puffing. Um, it's pretty common for salespeople. It's not fraudulent though. That's one of the big questions. People get that mixed up. Especially when you're talking about antitrust laws, things like that. But puffing is not fraudulent. It's just kind of just like being salesy, overly salesy, making again extravagant claims. An example for puffing in real estate would be like if somebody walked in to the house. Like if you were an agent and you walked in with your client and you said, "Oh my, this is the biggest, this is the biggest kitchen I've ever seen," or "Oh my God, this is the nicest kitchen I've ever seen." Now, granted, again, it's not fraud because they don't know. Like, you technically could be telling the truth. Like, you could be like, "Oh yeah, that really is the nicest kitchen I've ever seen." Chances are, you're just making an extravagant claim to make it sound better. But yeah, that's basically the 411 on that one. All right, 24. Brokerages and real estate agents across America connect using is it a mortgage listing group or MLG? Is it a multiple listing service or MLS? Is it the multiple listing bank or the MLB or the multiple listing team MLT? All right, so we can give us an opportunity to think that one over. Alrighty, so correct answer for this one is the MLS, multiple listing service. So obviously agencies compete with each other, like any businesses, but sometimes they work together in big projects and such. But brokerages connect using a multiple listing service. So if you guys have bought a house before, or maybe you haven't, basically, uh, when you contract with a broker or a salesperson, they're going to give you access to the MLS. And basically, you could look at all the houses available in your area. And they're not exclusive to your brokerage. And this is nice for sellers and buyers. I would say mainly for buyers because buyers can see all the options. And you can go on websites nowadays like Zillow and all that stuff, and it kind of does the same thing, in MLS. The MLS does, but not really. Like MLS is much broader. It's got so much more on there, as well as like foreclosure stuff that Zillow and some websites do not cover, because again, it's all under one umbrella. So there's way more options, and again, buyers and sellers can see like everything out there, with as long as obviously the real estate agent helps them and shows them the stuff through the MLS. But yeah, that's just one of the main reasons it's nice to get a real estate agent to help you in terms of buying and selling a house, stuff like that. So, anyways, 25, an agent took a listing and later discovered that her client had previously been declared incompetent by the court. The listing is now, and it gives us four options here. Is it renegotiable by both parties? Is it of no value to the agent because the contract is void? Is it unaffected because their client took the listing, making it a verbal contract? Or is it unaffected because the agent was acting as good faith as the owner's agent? Alrighty. So, going to give you guys an opportunity here to think that one over. All right. So, if you guys remember earlier, I was talking about those four things that need to happen in order for a contract to be valid. One of the things that I don't think I mentioned, but the party must be of sound mind, and if they're not of sound mind, the contract is void. So it's going to be this one here. It's of no value to the agent because the contract is void. So yeah, since the client has been declared incompetent, the listing is now void. And again, that it's super important when we're talking about contract law, especially in real estate. These things have to occur, or else the contract's just basically either voidable, or just not legitimate. So they have to be 18 years older, sound mind, as I mentioned earlier. It has to be legal. Like, you can't have a contract to kill or steal or do anything illegal. And of course, the contract must hold a clear and definite consideration. And lastly, there must be a mutual consent of the contract, as we were talking about earlier. So, all right, next question, 26. A mortgage loan that requires monthly payments of $400 for 15 years and a final payment of $20,000. Typically, a loan structured like this is called and it gives us four options. Is it a home equity loan? Is it a standard loan? Is it a payday loan? Or is it a balloon loan? Alrighty. So, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. Alrighty. So, did you guys come up with it? Correct answer for this one is a balloon loan. So, a balloon loan is a mortgage which does not fully amortize over the term. Amortization is when payments divided to equal amounts of the duration of the loan. A balloon loan is different because not all payments are equally divided, and most substantial payments are called balloon payments. Common example of a balloon loan is a 7-year Fannie Mae balloon, which features monthly payments based on a 30-year mortgage, making the rates of payments much, much lower. But at the end of the 7 years, guess what? The rest of the loan is due. This last payment is called a balloon payment because it's a large size. That's where they get the name balloon loan, balloon payment, things like that. But yeah, at that moment, the borrower may sell the home to cover the balloon payment or take out a new loan to cover the payment, effectively refinancing. All right, next one, 27. So, a real estate agent advertised a home for $250,000. When a Chinese couple asked the agent for the price of the house, the agent told them the seller wanted $260,000 instead. Under the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, such a statement is it illegal because the difference of the offering price quoted and the quoted price is greater than 10%? Is it illegal because the terms of the potential sale were changed for the Chinese couple? Is it legal because the representation was made by the agent, not directly owner? Or is it legal because the Chinese family has the opportunity to buy the house? All right, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. Alrighty. So for this one, it is the second option. It's illegal because the terms of a potential sale were changed for a Chinese couple. Listen, you can't change a sale just because someone else is a different race, religion, sex. It doesn't matter. That's a that's discrimination. And of course, the Federal Fair Housing Act protects people from discrimination. So basically, yeah, it's just totally illegal and against the rules. But this one I see some people get mixed up because they think, they just see this first option. They're like, oh well, this is saying it's illegal, and maybe they're not familiar. Maybe they're like, oh well, yeah, it's since it's 10%. I mean, it wouldn't work. Or people say, oh well, it's legal because they still have an opportunity to buy the house, just a little more. Well, no, it's still illegal because again, the terms of the sale were changed because or for I'm sorry, the terms of the potential sale were changed for the Chinese couple. So yeah. All right, next question. 28. Which of the following best describes eminent domain? Okay. Is it a term used to describe the right of the government to take over people's children, sometimes pets? Is it a term used to describe the right of the government to take over privately owned banks? Is it a term to describe the right of the government to take over privately owned real estate? Or is it a term to describe the right of the government to take over privately owned livestock? All right. I'm giving you guys an opportunity here to think it over. Alrighty. Did you guys come up with it? Correct answer for this one is real estate. It is a term used to describe the right of the government to take over privately owned real estate. So we haven't talked about eminent domain much in this video. We have previously on our channel, but pretty much, despite owners' wishes, normally it's when the government takes over privately owned real estate. It happens typically with infrastructure. If the government wants to build things like highways, pipelines, railroads, etc. But the Fifth and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution permit the government to exercise the power of eminent domain. All right, next question. Question 29. All right, the biggest difference between private and public land use controls gives us four options. The government writes or enforces private land use controls, but it does not impose and enforce zoning. Is it the government does not write or enforce private land use controls, but it does impose and enforce zoning? Is it public land use controls are written in the Constitution while private are up to local governments? Is it private land use controls are written in the Constitution while public are up to the local governments? Alrighty, so a lot to unpack there. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think about that one. Okay, so did you guys come up with it? Here's the deal. It's the second option right here. The government does not write or enforce private land use controls, but it does in fact impose and enforce zoning. So when you guys hear the terms private and public, you want to think of government for public and private as privately owned, owners, people, citizens, things like that. Private people, regular citizens, they make land use controls. Zoning, that is made by public, that is by the government, that is, government run organizations. That imposes and enforces zoning. So that is our correct answer. So obviously, as I was just saying, the explanation just states the same thing. But the biggest difference, the key takeaway, the biggest difference is that the government does not write or enforce private controls, but it does in fact impose and enforce public controls like zoning. So if a private land use control is made by somebody, and government's not going to come in and enforce that. No, that's completely up to the individual or the private party to deal with that. The government has no say in that kind of stuff. All right, next question. Question 30. What is the outcome when a purchaser signs a purchase agreement and gives the seller's broker a large check? Okay, there's four options. Is it the transaction is considered an offer? Is it this transaction is considered a contract? Is it this transaction is an amendment? Or is it this transaction is considered invalid? All right, so think that one over. All right, hopefully you guys came up with the answer for that one. Correct answer is it is an offer. Yes. This is like by definition, almost by definition, an offer. When you hear somebody signing a purchase agreement and giving the seller's broker a large check, that is considered an offer. So the way offers work is when a potential buyer is found, the agent must prepare them an offer, purchase the property. The form itself is usually pre-drafted or pre-printed. Obviously, forms vary from state to state, but it is customary, but not required, for a buyer to provide a deposit when making an offer to purchase. This deposit is referred to as earnest money, and it's important that the buyer understands the document as it becomes legally binding as soon as they sell it. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but you can actually potentially lose an earnest deposit uh, if you're not reading the contract correctly. You put in an offer, you act like you're going to buy the house, you go through all the steps, and then you back out. You actually could potentially lose that earnest money. So keep that in mind when you're advising your clients. All right, next question, 31. A collection of federal and state government laws that regulate the conduct and organization of business corporations, normally to promote fair competition for the benefit of consumers. All right, is it antitrust laws, civil rights laws, business and ethic laws, or civil rights and business laws? So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to come up with that one, think that one over. All right, did you guys come up with it? So this one, antitrust laws is the correct answer. Pretty straightforward. So this one I do see mixed up every so often. They get antitrust laws mixed up with civil right laws or, just standard business and ethic laws. But no, antitrust laws is what they were looking for here. That is the collection of federal and state government laws that regulate the conduct and organization of business corporations to promote fair competition for the benefit of the consumers. That's their big goal, is to protect the consumers. So, antitrust laws are good for a healthy economy, but we'll get a little more into that later if it comes up. But yeah, the correct answer for this one is antitrust laws. All right, next question. 32. All right. Which type of lien is a claim imposed against a property without the consent of its owner? All right, gives us four options. Is it an involuntary lien, a voluntary lien, a mortgage lien, or an equity lien? All right, think that one over. Come up with a educated answer. Did you guys figure it out? All right. When you read this, here's a little tip. Against, think involuntary. Against, involuntary. Or even without the consent, think of involuntary. Because voluntary, it's like, oh yeah, I'm giving it up. I don't care. Well, no, involuntary is the opposite. And since real estate liens are financial claims against property, when you think of voluntary and involuntary, you think of what are the two ways that liens can be created, one with consent and one without, which actually we mentioned that earlier or under here. They're divided into two categories, voluntary and involuntary. So when you think of involuntary liens, those aren't created by the homeowner. For example, like a government, like the IRS or government revenue authorities for, unpaid duties or taxes, they'll put in involuntary lien on the property. So that's where that comes into play. But all right, next question. All right, Justin takes out a mortgage loan that requires monthly payments of $650.50 for 25 years and a final payment of $30,000. What type of loan is this? Is it a variable cost loan? Is it a fixed rate loan? Is it a balloon loan or an FHA loan? All right, think that one over. Come up with an educated answer for that one. Alrighty. So, correct answer for this one is a balloon loan. So remember we were talking about it earlier? Balloon loans, balloon payments, all that good stuff. That's what this is. This is an example of a balloon loan. So again, think of it like this. When you hear this thing, a final payment, and it's this big number, this huge number, that is going to be the balloon payment, which means this is a balloon loan. So remember that, and you'll understand balloon loans. All right, next question. Which of the following statements about water rights is true? Choose the best answer. The two basic forms of water rights are ocean rights and lake rights. Water rights are double taxed, similarly to how corporations are taxed. Water rights are transferred exclusively in quitclaim deeds. And water rights are appurtenant. Alrighty, so think that one over. Reread the answers if you need to. Alrighty, did you guys come up with it? So, the correct answer for this one is water rights are appurtenant. Yes. And do you guys know what appurtenant means? That means that they run with the land. For those of you guys who didn't know, it runs with the land and not the original owner. In other words, if an oceanfront property is sold, the new owner gains the littoral rights and the seller relinquishes his or her rights. Get it? Cool. All right, next question. 35. Under a lease for a commercial property, a tenant agrees to pay $3,000 per month plus 4% of the gross monthly sales. This type of lease is called and it gives us our four options. Is it a percentage lease? Is it a triple net lease? Is it a double net lease? Or is it a single net lease? All right. Interesting. So think that one over. All right, you guys ready? So the correct answer for this one is a percentage lease. So when you see this 4% here, just think percentage lease. When we're talking double net, triple net, single net, that just means it has an additional thing that they have to pay. But when you see that percentage, again, that's when you just know that that's percentage lease. It's pretty self-explanatory there. But again, just as soon as you see any percentage when it's talking about leases, you just think, oh, I see the percentage point there. That's a percentage lease. Alrighty. Next question. 36. Okay, local zoning ordinances often regulate all the following except market value of property, density of population, appropriate uses for the buildings, or height of buildings in an area. So think that one over. Did you guys figure it out? Alrighty. Correct answer for this one is the market value of property. So zoning usually increases the marketability of the property. That is true. The idea is when a community is organized, it's more attractive, safer, it's fewer issues, things like that. However, it does not directly affect market value. For example, they can't implement zoning codes to raise what people pay for properties. They can, however, implement zoning codes to help promote the local economy. Market value is never directly determined by the government. So this is kind of a trick question. Again, it's one of those things where it's like technically, you could be like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, zoning does help the market value of property, but again, it doesn't regulate it, and that's a huge difference. There's a huge distinction there, because those are two different things: to regulate and to change versus, just helping. Two different things, but yeah. So that's it for that one. Next question. All right, question 37. A good example of a purchase agreement is ordering something online and checking a box that says terms and conditions, transferring funds to one agent from another, going to the mall or Walmart. Okay, a little bit of a interesting one. All right, I'll give you guys an opportunity to read that over, think it over. All right, did you guys come up with it? Correct answer for this one is ordering something online and checking a box that says terms and conditions. So I know this is a little bit of a weird question, but it's super important, and it comes up pretty often on the exam itself. You have to understand what a purchase agreement is, and I think the reason they ask these types of questions is because I think buyers specifically, they don't fully understand uh, what they're getting into when they're doing an offer or when they're signing a purchase agreement. They might think, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna submit an offer. It's like, they might think they're at a flea market and they're just like lowballing or, something like that. But no, this is a huge commitment. This is a purchase agreement. And while you guys might not realize it, but other people and some people, or maybe you guys do, but purchase agreements are a really big deal. And when you're doing something as big as buying a house or putting in an offer in a house, or even ordering doing something small like ordering something online and checking the terms and conditions, those are all examples of purchase agreements. Now, granted, the repercussions for breaking these agreements are much different than ordering something online versus, buying or putting an offer in a house, things like that. But the fact remains true. These things are super important. And, no matter what state you're in, the government commissions and the people that give these exams, they want you to understand what a purchase agreement is, because it's not a laughing matter. It's not a tiny thing. It's a huge thing. And that's why it's super important. I encourage you guys to do this. I'm sure you'll hear the story of your real estate career, but make sure you have your clients read, every part of the contract. Read through it, read everything, and you need to. That is your job to tell them to do that. It is. It's your job to explain to them these contracts and to have them read it over. But yeah, went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but super important, especially for that question to understand that. All right, question 38. Which of the following can be achieved by dividing the price of a property by the rent that is produced? Is it the gross rent multiplier? Is it the economic value? Is it the capitalization rate? Or is it the interest rate? All righty, think that one over. Give you guys an opportunity to think about that. Read over the question and answers again. Did you guys figure it out? All right. The correct answer for this one is the gross rent multiplier. Simple as this, pretty straightforward. The formula for the gross rent multiplier is by dividing, or it's price of property divided by rent equals gross rent multiplier. So that's a formula. So this is basically asking what is the what form, like we're going to give you the formula. What is this? And basically the answer for this is the gross rent multiplier. So, all right, next question. All right, what is the general technique of determining three-dimensional positions of points and the distances and angles between them? Is it sewer lateral inspecting, sub and plot surveying, subdivision surveying, or just surveying? All right, interesting. Okay, give you guys an opportunity to pause here, read it over, or just think it over. Read it over, think it over, come up with your educated answer. Did you guys figure it out? Okay, this is kind of a trick question. So when you are reading this, what is the general technique? I want you guys to underline this, or highlight it or do whatever. The general technique, because believe it or not, these two are actually legitimate ways of surveying property, but it's asking what the general technique is, and that's our answer. Surveying is the general technique of determining three-dimensional. Now, if it was asking us like the specific definition of sub and plot or subdivision, then yes, obviously, um, you'd have to choose that one. But this is asking again for the general technique, which gives us our answer as surveying. All right, 40. Generally speaking, what happens when the supply of available houses in an area decreases significantly? Is it commission rates are lowered? Is it commission rates are raised? Is it the average cost of housing goes up? Or is it the average cost of housing goes down? All right, let me give you guys an opportunity to pause here, think it over, read it over again. Did you guys come up with it? Okay, let's break this down real fast. What happens when the supply of available houses in an area decreases significantly? So if you guys are familiar with supply and demand, it works kind of like a scale. If one side raises, one side lowers, and vice versa. Now, with that being said, you have to know what raises and lowers. Is it the commissions or is it the housing prices? Well, the commissions aren't really directly affected by supply and demands, or I'm sorry, the supply of available houses. Supply and demand, that does affect, potentially affects commission rates in some perspectives, but typically not so much. And again, that's in this question, it says generally speaking. So for this one, what happens when the supply of available houses in an area decreases? It would be the average cost of housing goes up because again, it's like a scale. Because the available houses in the area decrease, the average cost of housing increases or goes up. So yeah, that's pretty much that one. Again, a little bit of an economics question. You have to know what supply and demand is and kind of fully understand how it works. But this is actually one of our new questions that we added within the last year because we noticed there's a lot more questions about economics showing up on these exams. So keep that in mind in the back of your head as we go through these. All right, next question. The rights of the owner of a property located along a river are called riparian rights, littoral rights, water rights, or river rights. All right, so think that one over. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to reread it, things like that. Come with an educated answer. Did you guys come up with it? All right, so you might want to say river rights here because you're like, oh, well, a river, a river rights. But no, it's not like that. If you guys don't know already, riparian rights mean river, littoral rights mean lake. So that's a good way of memorizing them, of course. But under riparian rights, all landowners who properties adjoin a river or a stream have the right to make reasonable use of it as it flows through or over their properties. The only limitation owners have is they cannot stop or prevent the flow of the water. Now, riparian rights do vary from state to state, but most do grant unrestricted use. And unrestricted use just means owners have the right to access it for swimming, boating, fishing, building docks, etc. But yeah, riparian rights is the rights of the owner of property located along a river. All right, next question, 42. An example of economic obsolescence would be a large shed in the backyard that is rotted, flight patterns above your house, old shaggy carpet, or broken shingles. All right, so go ahead and think that one over. All right, did you guys figure it out? So the correct answer is flight patterns above your house. That would be an example of economic obsolescence. So, pretty much, economic obsolescence refers to the lost property due to external factors, meaning things off the property. So, a couple examples would be flight patterns, busy highway, rise in local crime, things like that. But obviously, we talked a little bit about depreciation a little bit earlier. Depreciation commonly comes up on the exam. So, when we're talking about economic obsolescence, um, you know, it's super important that you understand uh, what it is as well as what an example is, because these are pretty common questions on the exam. All right, 43. Closing is called many names, which is not a name for closing. Okay, closing is our first one. Passing the papers is our second. Exchange and transfers are our third, and settlement and transfer is our fourth. Alrighty, so I'm gonna give you guys an opportunity to think that one over, read it over if you need to. So obviously, you guys can go ahead and cross out the first option. It's definitely not closing. um, but the correct answer for this one is exchange and transfer. So you have to be familiar, because what you guys will learn when you get your real estate license, and what you know a lot of real estate agents that have been in the business know for a while, is that you're going to meet a lot of different people, and a lot of people use different terminology depending on where they used to live, where they're from, things like that. So I think they throw in these sorts of questions because they want you to know fully, like, if someone comes from the south or the north or wherever you live, and they're using different terminology, you need to be flexible and familiar enough to know what you're talking about in all formats. So in this instance, they're asking, what closing is called a lot of things, but what is not a name for closing? Because you don't want to sound like you have no idea what you're talking about. And it's exchange and transfer. That's not a thing. So yeah, but settlement and transfer, passing papers, closing, those are all perfectly fine names to use for closing. All right, next question. 44. All right, the best way to determine fair value uses four options: gross rent multiplier, appraisal, 28 by 36 rule, or the divisional contracts. All right, so think that one over. Did you guys figure it out? So for this one, the correct answer is appraisal. So remember we were talking about earlier about appraisals and how they determine, fair value and stuff like that, and they use a bunch of different factors, things like that. Um, yeah. So for this one, it's asking what is the best way to determine fair value. And when you hear that word fair value, you could just think of appraisal. And again, I do see this one confused, because some people will put gross rent multiplier for this because they're like, well, technically, you could use gross rent multiplier to figure out, how many years it would take to pay off, the thing in rent. But again, you guys have to remember, with a lot of these questions, it's asking what's the best answer. And this is definitely an example of that, because the best way to determine fair value is appraisal. That is the process. That is what it is. That's what it's designed to do. Gross rent multiplier is something different. It can be used in certain perspectives, um, and it doesn't really determine fair value. It just, again, it addresses it. It's a different formula to address something completely different. So yeah, appraisals are answer for that one. All right, 45. A regulation that aims to give all legal individuals an equal opportunity to apply for loans. It's the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA. It's the Civil Rights of 1866 and 1964. Or I'm sorry, I said the Civil Rights Acts of 1866 and 1964. It's the Credit Consumer Act, or the CCA. Or is it the Fair Housing Act? All right, so think that one over. Come up with your educated guess or answer for that one. Okay. You guys come up with it? So you might be thinking, if you're not familiar with it, you might be thinking it's this one, or even this one. I mean, if you don't know if you don't know this one's just going to be, you're going to have to guess on this one. The correct answer for this one is the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. So this is one of those ones you just have to understand what they're talking about. And basically, I'll explain what the Equal Credit Opportunity Act is. It's a regulation that aims to give all legal individuals an equal opportunity to apply for loans. So the act prohibits creditors and lenders from considering a consumer's race, religion, sex, etc., and deciding whether or not to approve their credit application. This act protects consumers from being wrongfully discriminated. No matter what type of person applies for a loan, they cannot be turned away due to factors that are not directly related to their credit. So, super important act, of course. And again, you might think for this one, oh, maybe it's the Fair Housing Act. Maybe that's all under the one umbrella, but no, it's specifically the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And sometimes you'll hear commercials and they'll mention this. That's kind of how I remember this, is when if you hear those commercials for like loans and stuff like that, they're like protected by the Equal Credit Opportunity Act or the ECOA. Like, that's how I remember this one. It's just those like weird commercials. But yeah, so that one, again, Equal Credit Opportunity Act is your answer. All right, next question. Okay, 46. The owner of a condominium has the use of many facilities there, including a pool. Under the typical condominium agreement, the facilities are owned by, because there's four options, all the condominium owners in the form of percentage of undivided interest, some of the condominium owners in the form of divided interest, the corporation in which each of the owners holds stock, or the association of homeowners in the condominium. Okay, interesting one. A little bit of a mouthful there. So think that one over. Come up with your educated answer. Did you guys figure that one out? Okay. For this one, it is going to be the first option. It's all the condominium owners in the form of percentage of undivided interest. So condominium, often shortened condo, as we talked very earlier in this video, in this exam. It's just basically, it's similar to an apartment, but it's independently sellable. So when we're talking about condominium owners, it's a form of percentage of undivided interest because all condominium owners legally own a portion of the facilities. So the pool and many of the facilities are technically owned by all of the owners. And each percentage of owner, each owner has a percentage of interest in those facilities. So that's how they come up with the answer for that one, and that's what that is. That's how those things work. All right, next question. 47. It amended the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, the revision of CERCLA. Is it the EPA, the CWA, the SDWA, or the SARA? All right, so you got to know your acts for this one. You got to know your environmental law. Think that one over, and I'll come back in a couple seconds. Did you guys figure it out? Okay, so this one is super important to understand for a couple reasons. Again, they love to throw a lot of laws, amendments, things like that on the real estate exam because, let's be honest, they're kind of tough to memorize everything. It is tough to memorize all these acts, all these laws, especially, you guys remember this is the national portion, but there's also state portions that you guys have to take, and guess what? There's state laws and acts you have to remember. So they love to throw these questions on there, and you just have to memorize them. I mean, a good way of doing this, obviously, is what you're doing right now, going through these exams, learning all of them. But of course, feel free to make some note cards for yourself and just plow through these acts and laws. But anyway, the correct answer for this one, did you guys come up with it? It's SARA, or SARA. I don't know why I said Sarah, but basically what it is the Super Fund Amendments and Reauthorization Act of 1986, often abbreviated SARA. So when CERCLA expired, this was the amendment to that, and it basically added a bunch of more stuff. But the big change had to deal with liability, and that's when a property owner has been innocent of all involvement with a hazardous waste site under certain circumstances. He can claim immunity now from responsibility. So with this act, like before then, let's say you moved on a property and there was like hazardous waste on it, uh, you you technically could have been legally liable even though you had no idea. And that was the worst. I think that was probably the worst part about CERCLA, is it didn't protect people like that. So when they amended it, they made sure that it was different. Now, innocent landowners are immune from legal liability. So if someone buys property and then a year or two later they discover, that there's some sort of hazardous waste on it that they weren't aware of before they bought the property, guess what? Now they're not responsible. They don't have that liability. Now that the liability would fall on the previous homeowners for not disclosing that, or for fixing it, or handling the situation. So yeah, that's a little deep dive on that one. All right, next question. All right, 48. An example of an antitrust violation is buying a house in another state without a real estate license, transferring funds from one bank to another through escrow, selling a house without a real estate license, or dividing territories. Oh, interesting. All right, think that one over. Gonna give you guys an opportunity to read it over. Pause here if you need. All right, did you guys figure it out? So the correct answer for this one is dividing territories. Now I'm sure you're like, wait, what? Why? What? So yeah, when we're talking about antitrust laws, remember it's a specific laws where they sat down and they wrote down all this stuff about what we don't want to happen, and what businesses and people are doing and how they're taking advantage of consumers. Now, you probably might think that the third option is the correct answer, and I see people mix this one up. Selling a house without a real estate license. So obviously, yeah, guess what? You can't do that. But that's not an antitrust violation. And the question specifically says, what is the example of an antitrust violation? It doesn't say, which of the following is illegal or something like that. No, it just says, which is an example of an antitrust violation. And the exam loves to do this. They'll give you answers that are kind of correct or half correct. And I did mention this earlier in the video, but comes up pretty often. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's for this one's dividing territories. So, and if you guys didn't know what that is, it's when competing brokers split territories and divide interests accordingly. So if agents met up and agreed to divide the town in 3 separate areas to work in, that would be an example of dividing territories. This prevents competition, which is obviously bad for the consumer, and as I mentioned, an antitrust violation. All right, next question. So, here you go. Acceleration is a term associated with which type of document? Is it a rental agreement, or I'm sorry, rental agreements, mortgages, deeds, or leases? All right. So think that one over. Gonna give you guys an opportunity to reread it and stuff like that. All right, you guys figure it out? Correct answer for this one is mortgages. So when you hear acceleration, think of mortgages. Acceleration clause is a contract provision that allows a lender to require a borrower to repay all of an outstanding loan if payments are not made or there's a breach of contract. Usually, if a borrower isn't making any payments on the property, the acceleration clause will come into effect, which demands immediate payment for the said property. It's more of a legal clause that they add for protection to make sure borrowers aren't taking advantage of them. But yes, it comes up uh, within mortgages. That's the key takeaway here. When you hear acceleration, think of mortgages. All right, next question. All right, 50. All right, closing is always the blank step in executing a real estate transaction. It's the final, it's the fourth, the third, or the second. Alrighty, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. Pause here. All right, you guys figure it out? So the correct answer for this one is final. Yes, final. When you hear closing, think of final, because closing is the final step in a real estate transaction. And as I mentioned earlier, it was called by many names, settlement transfer, passing the papers, but it is always going to be the final step in a real estate transaction. It could be the fourth or third, depending on, how many steps this specific transaction is. But when you're looking at this, remember this question. It says here, closing is always. You want to remember, you want to take a look at these words because they come into play. All the words that come into these questions. Don't want to ever, mistake a question just for some, misreading something like that. But yeah, so that's 50 questions. That was all of them for today. We're going to go over the other 50 in our next video. Look for that as soon as you finish watching this. I'm going to go ahead and link that down below as well as at the very end here. If you guys haven't liked or subscribed yet, please do. Of course, we do post questions. We post weekly questions. We post videos like this. We post deep dives on specific exam topics. Tons of stuff. And of course, if you want to try the exam yourself, go to our website, realestatelicencewizard.com. On there, you can take the exam. You don't have to listen to my voice. You can just take the exam yourself. You get to get as many times as you want if you check out some of our packages, stuff like that. So yeah, I encourage you guys to check it out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, this is Zach from realestatelicencewizard.com. Make today magical. I'll see you guys next video.